We begin tonight with a big development in this story that we've been watching very closely, the debate that's happening overseas right now over legislation to execute people for being gay. It's the anti-homosexuality bill of 2009. It's being considered in the nation of Uganda. And a number of Americans, prominent and otherwise, are implicated in the genesis of this bill. As written, it calls for a sentence of life in prison for being gay. It also calls for death by hanging for being gay and being HIV positive. Today, a Ugandan official announced that those two most controversial provisions in the bill will be dropped. The Ugandan ethics minister telling Bloomberg News that an amended version of the anti-gay bill will not include the death penalty or life imprisonment. According to this official, the new version of the anti-homosexuality bill is expected to be presented to the Ugandan parliament in 2 weeks. Taking the death penalty and life imprisonment out of the bill is, of course, a victory for opponents of the legislation. But if only those two things come out, what stays in are things like a sentence of 3 years in prison for knowing somebody is gay and not reporting them to the government. 7 years in prison for what they call attempting to commit the offense of homosexuality, whatever that means. Being gay would also still be an extraditable offense. So if a citizen of Uganda was suspected of being gay, even in some other country somewhere, even in the United States, that would be grounds to extradite that person back to Uganda so they could be prosecuted and, if convicted, imprisoned for being gay. As far as we know, all those penalties are staying in the revised version of the bill. And what's more, the revised version of the bill will apparently add something new. Uganda's ethics minister telling Bloomberg that in addition to formulating punishments for gay people, the bill will also include counseling. Counseling to, quote, and I'm quoting here directly, attract errant people to acceptable sexual orientation. Thus putting an exclamation point on the connection we drew last night between American conservatives' pet cause, the curing homosexuality industry, and this bill overseas. Last night on this program, I talked with Richard Cohen, an unlicensed American would-be therapist who's head of a group called the International Healing Foundation. They say they can change people from gay to straight. They have a variety of trainings and books and CD and DVD series for you to buy if you believe the debunked unscientific claptrap that they're selling. Mr. Cohen's organization dispatched a staffer to address the Ugandan parliament earlier this year and an anti-gay conference. And the organization donated copies of Mr. Cohen's dubious training materials and books to the promoters of the Kill the Gays legislation. Mr. Cohen's writings have been used in Uganda as if they provide a scientific justification for this new anti-gay bill, even though Mr. Cohen says now that he's not at all in favor of the legislation. You're telling them exactly what they need to hear in order to justify the Kill the Gays bill. I mean, your book portrays gay people as predators who must be stopped to protect the innocent.
No, not at all.
The legislator who sponsored the bill told the Associated Press today that he insists these strict measures, which I know you abhor, but these strict measures they're proposing, including execution, are necessary in their country to stop homosexuals from recruiting school children. Let me also just read to you from your book, okay, page 49. Homosexuals are at least 12 times more likely to molest children than heterosexuals. Homosexual teachers are at least 7 times more likely to molest a pupil. Homosexual teachers are estimated to have committed at least 25% of pupil molestation. 40% of molestation assaults were made by those who engage in homosexuality. This is the claim that you make in your book that exactly feeds these folks who want to execute people for being gay what they need in order to justify that. Right. Do you stand by what you said in your book?
Actually, you know, that one particular quote, when I do republish it, reprint it, we will extract that from it because we don't want such things to be used against homosexual persons.
But this is made up, fake authoritative stuff that in other countries is being taken as science and used to justify, quite literally, killing gay people. Do you see now why you're being used in a political context here?
I see that they're using it, but you took that one little quote out of a 300-page book, and the thrust and the gist of the text is why people have same-sex attraction and the opportunity for those with unwanted homosexual feelings to come out of homosexuality.
Right out of the gate last night, Mr. Cohen wanted to make it clear that he is against the Kill the Gays legislation. But as we've reported, his organization flew a staffer over to Uganda to address the Ugandan parliament about homosexuality earlier this year, telling them the message of Mr. Cohen and his group that gay people don't really have to be that way if they don't want to be. It wasn't until our producers asked last week that Mr. Cohen and his group actually came out and said they were against this bill. It was 8 months ago that they dispatched their staffer to go advise them on these matters. The event that Mr. Cohen's staffer attended was a conference in March. In follow-up meetings after that conference, Mr. Cohen's name and his works were specifically cited as if they were credible scientific research on this issue.
Homosexuality is not about sex, but about seeking the love of a father or of a mother. Okay? It's not about sex, really. Although sex happens to be in it, but a person really is seeking for the love of a father, love of a mother. Richard Cohen is one of the writers one of the very authoritative writers who has written on this subject. He himself was a former homosexual. Then he studied psychology, psychiatry, psychotherapy, and used himself as a guinea pig, and was able to come out of homosexuality. And today, he is a married man with 3 children. This is him coming out straight.
The other line of defense from Richard Cohen and these American anti-gay activists who have gone to Uganda and worked with the people who were writing and promoting this Kill the Gays legislation. The other line of defense now is that their work going over to that country to address the parliament there and speaking at these conferences, they say their work had nothing whatsoever to do with this law. That claim is false, and demonstrably so. Today we have the chance to speak to the Reverend Kapia Kaoma. He's an Anglican priest who went undercover to that meeting that you just saw a clip of and to the anti-gay conference that preceded it. At the conference, the priest recorded the sound of anti-gay American activist Scott Lively urging Ugandans to put a stop to the gay agenda.
If your definition of homosexuality is being able to do whatever you want to, and that you should be able to go and engage in sex with another person, and that because of that, the disease you have is going to spread to that person, and they're going to take it home and give it to their wife, how much tolerance should we have for that? We should have 0 tolerance for that. You should not be able to do that.
American anti-gay activists urging the Ugandans to show 0 tolerance for homosexuality. According to the priest who attended that event, there is a direct correlation between that conference, between American activists, anti-gay activists from the United States going over there and talking about homosexuality to a Ugandan audience, and the ultimate legislation.
When he leaves, we have the meeting with the Family Life Network, by the way, which I attended as well, in which now the strategy came up. How do we stop the international gay agenda? And it was one of the main person from the parliament who is on tape saying that after listening to Lively, the parliament felt that we need a new law in Uganda which would take into consideration the international gay agenda. So then they came up with this bill.
Reverend Kaoma told us today that the misinformation spread during these conferences is often corrected here in America, but not necessarily so overseas.
So we have this problem of evangelicals going there, making statements, and then coming back to America, continuing to enjoy life, but they leave the fire burning. And today, even the great man, Lively, can tell you now that he's opposed to the bill. You know, has he told the Ugandans that? He hasn't. But he told the American audience. But the people he misled are Ugandans.
American anti-gay activists and conservatives were instrumental in making this bill happen in Uganda, even as they say to American audiences now that they're against it. The question still remains, will they use the influence that they have wielded to such horrific effect in Uganda so far to get Uganda to stop doing what it's doing? As yet, Mr. Cohen's only statement against the bill appears to have been to us, because we asked. Although all day I've been fending off insistent suggestions from the Rachel Maddow Show staff that we pitch in together to buy him an airline ticket to Uganda so he can go tell them his feelings against the bill now in person, since they apparently think that he is an authority on these matters. Mr. Cohen, if you are watching and you would like to do that, we think we could raise the money to send you there in about 4 minutes. I'm only half kidding. As yet, we have received some distancing themselves statements from a number of conservative members of Congress who have reportedly had intensive dealings with Uganda as members of the secretive religious group, the Family. None of these members of Congress have told us that they are willing to communicate their feelings about this bill to anyone other than us. Like, for example, say, to the government of Uganda that's supporting this bill, and over which the Family has been so proud to proclaim its influence. If you think this is bad now for American conservatives in terms of how deep they are in this mess, it is about to get much worse. Just in the next couple of minutes, the American involvement in this horrific legislation is about to have its lid blown off. We have to take a quick break right now, but Jeff Charlotte is standing by to join us next with some explosive new reporting about when and where the Kill the Gays plot was originally drawn up. You do not want to miss this. We will be right back.